Welcome to Exceptionally Speaking, the podcast where we explore how to better understand and support exceptional learners. I'm Dr. Meryl, and each week I sit down with dedicated educators, parents, and advocates to share real strategies, inspiring stories, and moments of hope. If you're enjoying these conversations or learning something new, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Michael Sykes, an equity-centered educator and advocate whose work is grounded in belonging, accountability, and love. With over a decade of experience in education, Michael brings deep insight into special education, inclusive leadership, and the everyday realities of navigating student needs. He holds multiple degrees in special education from the University of Northern Colorado and leads his own consulting organization, Equitable Solutions. In this episode, Michael shares his own journey into education and his experiences on both sides of the IEP table, as an educator and as a parent. We talk about the complexity of special and gifted education, the importance of humanizing the roles of special education teachers, and how schools can truly center students. Michael also introduces his book, Easy Equity, which invites us to reflect on how self-love and systemic change go hand in hand. His message is clear. Equity isn't about perfection, it's about practice. And it starts with how we show up for ourselves and others every day. A quick behind-the-scenes note. Michael actually recorded this episode with me twice. I forgot to hit record the first time, and he was gracious enough to reschedule for the very next day. I so appreciated his kindness and truly enjoyed both conversations. You can find more information about Michael and all our guests at hex24press.com. Please enjoy Exceptionally Speaking with Michael Sykes. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for joining us today on Exceptionally Speaking. I'm thrilled to talk to you again. How's it going?
I'm doing well, and it's good to be back, and I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you. Well, let's just jump in because I know we have a lot of stuff to talk about. I'd love to hear more just about your experience professionally becoming an educator and how personal aspects through your family, through your kids have impacted really the choices that you took and the leadership role that you ended up in today.
Well, yeah, I got into education, I want to say by accident. It wasn't necessarily by choice-ish. Like, I never thought I would be a special education teacher or in education, period. It really started when I needed a job because I was having a kid. And so they told me to apply to be a paraprofessional, and I did just that. I remember going into the interview, no quote unquote experience being a paraprofessional. I work with kids and things like that. But they said, what would you do if a kid cussed you out? And I was like, tell them to use better language? And I was like, Mike, you failed that interview. And I was walking out, I got a phone call before I literally left the building, and they were like, do you want the job? And I was like, oh my, yes, I definitely want this job. And it was like, can you start tomorrow? I was like, I'll start Monday. Let me get my life together. Let me take a breath. But that was an effective needs job, and that's working with students with emotional disabilities. So I did that for 6 years as a paraprofessional, and then I was worked with the district as an itinerant paraprofessional. Then I became a special education specialist, where I really coach teachers around IEPs and special education, and continue to work my way up. And that's all my experience professionally. Personally, special education is near and dear to my heart. I didn't even know once I got my degree in special education that my family, like my aunts, my cousins, they all had their degrees in special education. And so it turns out it's like in my bloodline almost, I would say. But personally, all of my kids receive services one way or another, via special education, via giftedness, and that's kind of been my experience. When I say, like, when I lived and breathed this work, I live and breathe this work. It doesn't turn off for me via either what I was doing professionally and when I went home. To be quite honest, I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic and have some ADHD, and I believe I had an IEP when I was little. So it's
Yeah, yeah. So for families that are approaching 504 or IEP conversations, what would be an easy way to just break down the difference between an IEP and a 504?
yeah. 504 is about access. It's all about providing access um to the curriculum or to education. So think of a 504 as a ramp. That's providing somebody that might be in a wheelchair, that might be elderly, but might need an easier way to access education. 504 is all about access. IEPs, individual education plans, it's about services. It's about providing a service and a skill to support what you're learning to access education.
That's great. I think that makes total sense. And so as parents are preparing for their initial IEP or 504 meeting, what would you say are some good questions they should be having in their back pocket to ask around support for their child?
Well, I think the first thing is for a parent, and I say what I did, what I learned I needed to do is take a breath. And it's challenging. And I have a lot of experience in equity, culture, special education, behavior. And when I would go to my children's IEP meetings, it was still hard. So I think I know taking a breath and being able to just center yourself and say, like, they're going to be talking about your most precious being, and it's okay. And take a breath, and because it's deeply personal. So, being parents being able to go into IEP center so you can actually think and not be overwhelmed is a gift that keeps on giving. The second thing I would tell parents is you're the biggest advocate and you're their best teacher. It's you. So trust yourself, trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, then it isn't right. And you can pause that meeting, you can reconvene, you can do all those things. And the other advice I would give parents is similar to what we are just talking about. Is this about access or is this about service? And the service should be based upon, if we're talking about IEP and the students identified with a disability, what services are you providing so my child can receive a free and appropriate education? If you're talking about initial IEPs, I want to know what's been done before we even got here. Like that should have already happened, but a lot of times it doesn't. So, what tools and what supports have you given my child thus far? And how has he responded to these interventions? That's how do we get here? So I response to intervention, RTI, those are some questions I would ask. I know parents probably don't know what RTI or MTSS, multi-tier systems of support. They don't know what those things are, but what I would ask is like, what have you tried thus far? And how's my child responded to that?
I think that's really good advice. And for everyone to know that coming to an initial meeting, there should be a lot of data, a lot of evidence pointing to this need. And so, absolutely ask the questions. I also think it's a good reminder to let parents know that they can pause the meeting, that they don't have to sign off that day. They can take some time to think about it, that really the family is in control of that situation. It doesn't feel like that a lot of times, but it's really a powerful message.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think as parents, we're trusting, quote unquote, the system and the people as experts. And special education people are experts in their area, but you're the expert in your child's life. And so you're driving everything. And so trust yourself more than you trust the educators, to be quite honest, because you know your child the best because you spent the most time with them. And so there's like I tell parents when your spider senses are going off, that's for a reason. You might not know exactly what it is, but you can pause and you can ask more questions. And if you don't feel comfortable moving forward, you don't have to move forward. So it might make some people upset. It might make some people uncomfortable. It might draw out a timeline, but that doesn't matter. It's all about the services and you making sure your child's getting everything that they need.
Absolutely. What has your experience been in contrast with we're lucky in Colorado that we even have advanced learning plans at all? A lot of states don't even recognize gifted goal setting, but what's that experience been like in contrast to special education plans?
I think with ALPs, it's been hit or miss, to be quite honest. Like people don't understand special education. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people don't understand giftedness as well. And so, like, I've been in meetings and they're trying to, like, give my daughter more work or she needs to do it faster. And I'm just like, no, like, she doesn't need more work. I need you to push her thinking. She's super empathic or empathetic, so she sees more, she feels more. So, like, playing to her strengths in leadership and understanding people, you need to be able to ask the right questions versus having her doing three writing assignments versus one writing assignment. That's not giftedness. And my experience with ALPs, or even with giftedness, like, in personally in, like, professionally, like, it's supporting adults from getting out of the way. My daughter's really smart, and, like, as an adult, or even as a father, I had to understand, like, my daughter's probably smarter than me, and she understands more than I do. And that's, you have to be able to put your ego away. And it's the same thing with educators. Like, my daughter's more in tune and aligned to all the different emotions that's going on in a room than a lot of teachers are. And oftentimes she's trying to help the whole classroom be centered and love themselves and do all of this other stuff. I'm like, baby, that's not your job. And that's what your heart is telling you to do. So, like, how do I support you with that without being overwhelmed? And support the educator, so to speak, in her ALP to, like, give her opportunities to be her.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a when I was a first year gen ed teacher and learning that the support that my gifted students needed, I needed to give them way more control over what that looked like, way more control. And once I did that, it was so much better for both ends when I could really understand what their interests were and where their strengths were and help support that versus tell them, here's what you need to be doing. It's huge. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. I in the ALP plans, it's all about her. Like, what do you want to do? What do you think? And it's hard as parents, like, knowing our kids, similar to, like, IEPs, like, knowing our kids, like, we know how to advocate. So being able to switch that hat to be like, I know what I think will work for you, but let me take it back. What do you think? What do you want to work on? And it's like, sometimes when she's saying, I don't know, or this and this, it's just like, no, baby, like, I need you to voice. And even when teachers try to jump in, it's like, okay, I appreciate your opinion. And what do you want? And I know teachers want to take control because they're classroom, and supporting students with advanced learning plans is extra work, and you have to do some extra things. And I understand that. And, or depending if the resistance of the teacher, um, this is what my daughter needs to thrive, and this will keep her engaged. And the things that you're doing for her, all students can benefit from this as well. Yeah. I often see, even in meetings for my own kids' ALP, around teachers' misconception of a more deficit model for ALPs because that's what they're used to in special education. And it's really not that. It's strength based. It's what are you doing well at? Where are you exceeding? And how can we support that? Not where do you need extra support? And even that mindset shift is huge for teachers. It is. It is. So, in thinking about teachers in special education and gifted education, thinking about our specialist roles, we know caseloads are out of control. There are better caseloads for SPED, for gifted. People laugh at you when you talk about caseloads because they don't care because there's no funding. So it's kind of whatever you can figure out. And these are amazing educators who care a ton about their students and about their work and can sometimes feel like they're not really being treated as a human in that role in what they're expected to do. And so what is your insights on how we can better humanize our specialist educators in a way that helps our students and our teachers? That's a hard question. I think first and foremost, we have to have a standard and a framework structure. Like, we had to be consistent across the board. Oftentimes I see districts have, like, a cutoff with center-based students and things like that. And so if you have a certain amount, let's say 16, everything over 16, they think about adding a paraprofessional or another teacher, or even possibly next year starting a whole nother center-based program. Like in Chicago, like my aunt retired, like they have a cutoff in Mount Mod. It's around 16 or 17. I don't get me to line, but everything extra, like they're paid a stipend or they're paid extra for that. When you have a caseload of 30 and 40 students, you're not going to write a quality IEP. You're not, because that's for 30 or 40 IEPs. That's not including initials or reavals and things like that. So you're spending so much time writing IEPs, and you're not going to be able to spend as much time servicing the students that have IEP. So that's inequity. That's a disservice to our students because and a disservice to our teachers because it's putting them in a spot. Because I believe all teachers want to teach and they love what they do, and I think special education teachers are just a gift. And so, like, to have the heart to support students with disabilities, like, there's a love there. And when you're pulled away from your love, writing all these IEPs, doing everything that you can do, and you're pulled away from the service, special education teachers, and I would say teachers in general, start to feel a certain way. So now you start to feel bitter because you don't feel like you're doing your heart's work, and that breeds resentment. And it's not, I don't want to say fair, it's not equitable because then the student isn't getting their needs met. So we have to be intentional more, to me, we have to be more intentional with caseloads because we want students to be more successful. Historically, special education students academically aren't performing to their grade level peers. I kind of understand why. And if we're trying to truly close the gap, that's why we have individual education plans. We need to be intentional with the academics and the services that are on their plan so we can meet those needs, so we can close that gap. If you're writing 30 or 40, 50, 60 IEPs or your caseload's ridiculous, you're not going to close that gap. So then the cycle just continues, and then the teachers get blamed for, hey, your students' academic scores are still low. They're this, and it's just like, but I have a caseload. I don't have an opportunity for success, and I don't believe in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really good insight. And over in the gifted world, we see that as well. With it feels so compliance driven that we lose the thought of what is the student's experience at school. And we're just okay with saying that at least our plans are written. We can't be, right? Like that's not what we're here for. Yes, the plans need to be written. Yes, they need to be meaningful and individualized. And the humans need to have time to do the work with the students. And what does that look like? And if we don't have the time, we need to give them the money for, like you said, for having extra caseload or whatever it may be. We need to figure out a way to move forward so teachers do stay, special education teachers do stay in education.
Yeah, like I think sometimes I've seen school districts really focus on the technical and the tactical. And I'm like, yo, we're in the human business. Like we're here for kids, but the kids seem to be on the bench, so to speak, and the technical and tactical and all the check boxes are in the game. I was like, I never agreed with that, and that's always been off to me, to be quite honest. And I was like, no, let's focus on the kids so we can actually support them because they're actually our future. The biggest investment that I think we can do in this as us in society is invest in our future, which is our kids. So when we're talking about giftedness and we're checking, have all these check boxes, all these plans we did, and I'm like, did we do any of these plans with fidelity? Are our kids experiencing these plans? Do we truly have a relationship with our students? Do we truly know our students? If the answer is no, we're backwards. I'd rather not write a good plan and have an authentic relationship with the student and know how to push them to bring out everything great that's inside them versus writing a good plan and not work with the student. Like, it doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
exactly.
And the students appreciate the adults that care about them and have relationships about them versus being technical and tactical, hand on a piece of paper, accommodation, so to speak. And there's no heart or love behind it. Like, We have to be heart centered and human centered in education because we're working with children.
It's interesting in secondary in our high schools for gifted students, at least in Colorado, when we give gifted students a little bit more autonomy around what their ALPs can look like, they're completely disinterested. And I don't blame them because it feels very meaningless. It feels like, what am I doing? Just filling out a Google form for my plan, right? But what does it really mean at school? If it means nothing, I'm not going to do it. And so and it makes complete sense. And so we've been putting a lot of thought, and we don't have an answer yet, my colleagues and I, around like, how do we truly make advanced learning plans integrated into what students are already doing that
Mhm.
is meaningful, and then and help push them in that way, um, or just looking at different options instead of looking at the same, well, this is the way we did it in elementary school and middle school, and so this is the way we have to do it in secondary. No, it's not. We can do it differently.
Yeah, I think
So
we have to.
yeah.
And like my daughter's in high school, it has to be relevant for her. So like when you're thinking about ALPs, like how we always do it gets the same results. If we want the same results, let's keep doing it that way. If we want different results, let's bring in the people we're actually doing the plans for and let them decide in a way that's relevant for them. Just like not extra work for them, but what are they already doing that's advanced so we can support them with doing a little bit more of, or be a little bit more in tune to pull like help them really understand what they're already doing. Then we're, they're getting credit for what they're like in a sense already doing. That's something people will have buy-in, or hey, it could be this and this, and people sometimes they never thought about it that way, and that's gets engagement and buy-in versus a piece of paper, a Google form, a couple of check boxes, and they're just like, no, my social life's more important than this ALP.
Yeah, and understandably. And it's like I think the bigger our system, or like the more high schools a district has to think through, the more differentiated ALPs we should have, the more differentiated options we should have to let students choose what makes most sense for them. And because for a giant district, you should not have just one way, this is how we write ALPs for all high schoolers in the whole district. So it's an interesting way to think about it, where it's more schools, we need to think about all the different options. So I'd love to talk more about equitable solutions and then your book, Easy Equity. Would you mind just sharing, how did you come to create equitable solutions and then eventually your book?
Yes, a lot of stuff that we're talking about is the reason why I created Equitable Solutions. Initially, Equitable Solutions was really supporting parents around special education because my experience as a parent and having kids with disabilities and giftedness wasn't good. It was terrible. And I wanted to make sure parents didn't experience the same thing that I experienced. And I needed an advocate and I needed this and that. And I was trying to be that for them. And so it kind of switched when I was doing that. And it was really hard for me to charge the people that I was supporting money because a lot of people that I was supporting, a lot of parents I was supporting come from impoverished backgrounds and things like that. And that didn't feel right. That wasn't connecting to my spirit. So I shifted. I do still support parents. I still do support some special education, but my focus is really around organizational culture, equity, coaching, executive coaching, professional development. So that's what Equitable Solutions really supports is districts, organization, companies, teams to build organization culture, build teams of belonging, and to support people going on their equitable journey and supporting with engagement with inside companies through professional development and coaching. And I wrote Easy Equity because I do equity work and culture work, and sometimes it's so frustrating. And I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to, and I was venting, and I was like, equity is not hard. I don't understand why this person doesn't get it. It's easy. And then I was like, easy equity. And I've just read a book. They said what's easy is sustainable. And I was like, all right, I need to make equity sustainable. So I wrote Easy Equity. And so Easy Equity is about going on your most to me, your most important equity journey, and that's how you value and validate self. So doing DEI work, I was wondering, I was like, not wondering, I was always curious, like, why is there so much resistance? When we're talking about genders, when we're talking about culture, when we're talking about race, why is there so much resistance? Having a behavior background, I started to investigate and get curious. And I was like, oh, okay. People have a hard time giving somebody else something that they're not receiving themselves. Because then they started to feel like they're being slighted, and it feels inequitable to them that they had to give somebody something that they're not getting. And so that breeds resistance. And I was like, people are going to have a hard time valuing and validate other genders, cultures, races when they don't value and validate themselves. So thus, easy equity is like how you value and validate yourself. So it's 20 strategy skills on how to love you. And so it's a book slash guide slash workbook to support you with loving you.
That's great. Would you mind just picking one of those 20 and talking through what would be one of the experiences and what would you work through in the book?
It's the first, like, one of my favorite is like the first chapter is gratitude to self. And it's not gratitude for you, the spouse, you, the parent, you, the director or something. Like, it's take off all your hats. What do you love about you? What are your superpowers? And you do that, and you kind of realize that oftentimes you don't sell yourself. You don't like name all the things that you're amazing at unless you're going through a job interview. And I think that's off to me. I'm like, no, you should be loving yourself and naming all your amazing things constantly. Just like we were talking about ALP should be strength based, how we act as adults should be strength based too. And so I try to build that habit. So if you give 5 things that you're amazing about today, that's 5 things. If you do it 2 days, that's 10 things. If you do it a week, that's 35. You do it for a month, that's 140. If you do it for a year, that's 1,825 things that you're saying that you love about you. And we know 80% of self talk is negative, and we make mistakes. And so when you're being mean to yourself and then you compare to all those things that you love about you and all your amazingness, it breeds resilience and you can move through those difficult times more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. Thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to check out the book.
Awesome.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about accountability. This idea that's pretty strong in education, accountability for students, teachers, leaders. Something I struggle with is our big emphasis on external accountability. So more of that punitive style, more of leaders thinking, how can I get this person to do this thing? And the tool that I'm going to use is, threat of writing them up or threat of a low evaluation score. And it honestly reminds me of, let's move our clip kind of situation on a clip chart, which is we know is not what's good for kids either. Or here's your treat for doing the right thing, or you don't get one if you don't do what I want you to. And I don't see that working for adults. I don't see that highly successful teams or groups of teachers are really externally focused. It's more about that internal accountability to the groups. I'd love to just hear your insights on what could that look like when a school culture is really embracing that internal accountability, and how do we add elements of easy equity and that self-reflection into it.
Yes, I think easy equity and internal accountability go hand in hand because, like, I call it mirror work. Look in the mirror and have that honest conversation to know that you're enough. Not because of what you did, not because of your title, not because of what you're saying, but you're enough just because you take in air. So you're plenty, you're enough. Also know you have the opportunity to be better. And so if you can look in the mirror and say some nice things to yourself, then you can explore the things that you can be better at. You can take accountable. You can have an honest reflection of what's happening around you. Then people can start to experience you different because you know who you are. So I can take responsibility and be vulnerable because my mistakes doesn't define who I am. I tell people you can make mistakes, you're not a mistake. These are two totally different things. But when you are pointing fingers and blaming everybody else or trying to have power over, that's not leadership. Leadership is when things aren't going awry, you don't point fingers. The first thing you do, like I said, is hold up that mirror. What role did I play in all this? And by doing that, you model for everybody else to not point fingers either. So everybody takes accountability for themselves. And then we go move forward and say, all right, we're all enough. We're all deserving of love. How can we be better and more than we ever thought we were together? So that's that group accountability. So then it comes less about what's not working, more about what can we build. And so when we start to shift these things, then we can start to create things that we never seen before. And we can create spaces and environments where kids can thrive and where we are actively growing. Because now we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to take accountable for myself, but we're more vulnerable and taking risks. And we know these risks and these mistakes are opportunities for us to grow versus when we make a mistake and we're being penalized for not getting something right and something perfect, that makes people shut down. It makes people go inward, and we lose the voices of the people that could actually support us with moving forward. Like so. Easy equity supports with all that because it has practices of like loving you. So the more you love you, the more you built the capacity, you had the bandwidth to be vulnerable, to admit that you made a mistake and know that you're not a mistake because you're not tied to validations of everybody else. You know how to value and validate yourself, so you're not shackled in everybody else's reality. So your actions aren't contingent on what other people think. Your actions are contingent on you and what you're thriving to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really love what you said about being able to shift your focus from just what's not working to what can we build? What can we build together when we are in that shared accountability and being vulnerable and being willing to make mistakes and own them? It's exciting. It's exciting to think about for sure. So, as we close out, I'm just wondering what is giving you hope? And there's a lot of heaviness that we're witnessing just in the public education realm right now. Where are you seeing moments of growth or healing or just possibility with education and with our exceptional learners?
What gives me hope? Like children's smiles. I think our exceptional learners and our scholars are like, to me, they are light. They are the North Star. And if you watch students with disability, how they show up every single day, the smiles on their faces, regardless of all their trials and tribulations, they still show up with a smile. Like it gives me the strength to move forward. Oftentimes I heard people say we need to love like a child. And I'm like, yes, we should, but we should love like an exceptional student because their love is unparalleled. It's limitless. It's the love that's unapologetic, and that's the kind of love that we need to be able to give in this current state in this society. We need to literally love thy neighbor. We need to, instead of fighting for equity, we need to start loving for equity. How do we pull people in? How do we be a shining star? How do we be a beacon of hope? How do we be light? Because when you fight, you invite resistance. So how do you love that person that's saying some terrible things? How do you get curious about that person that's saying some terrible things? How do you see them as deserving of love? When you see everybody is deserving of love, you start to move different. And that's similar to our exceptional students. They love everybody they come into contact with. They just smile, they're light, and we should be treating them as gold. And so like that's what inspires me every single day when I see students smile and I see them have pure joy. That like gives me hope and that builds my resiliency because then I'm like, how do I make this happen more often? And like if you're going to make this happen more often, who are you inviting in versus who are you pushing out? So I try to be like to everybody to say hi, hello, how are you doing, and truly mean it. And so they can start to feel my heart, feel my light, and feel my love. And like by doing that, I create opportunities for people to shine as well.
Thank you. I really like that. How are we bringing people in? How are we bringing people in? Thank you for leaving that message of hope for everyone. I think that's really empowering. And I really appreciate the time you spent today. And I hope we get to do it again. Thanks, Michael.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks. This episode of Exceptionally Speaking is brought to you by Hex 24 Press, where education meets imagination. I founded Hex 24 Press in 2024 to uplift educator voices and provide a publishing home for myself and other educators to bring our work into the world. You can find more information about today's guests, including links to their resources and services, at hex24press.com. Thank you for supporting educators, independent creators, and small business. We're so glad you're here.